Yahoo! Welcome, America. That's right. This is Home Talk USA right here on the Home Improvement Broadcasting Network. And you're now tuning in to the Made in America part of our show. We want to welcome all of you that's streaming all across this great, great country. Don't forget to check out our website at Home Talk USA. For those of you that were tuning in last week, we unveiled a new addition to our show. It's the Made in America show, and we have the Made in America guy himself, Mr. Greg Owens, will be my guest host each week and every week right here, where we can discuss Made in America products and technology. And I'd like to welcome my co-host of the Made in America show, Mr. Greg Owens. Hey, Mr. Greg, how you doing, my buddy?
Michael, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's been a hoot so far.
Well, unfortunately, last week I had a little medical emergency, and I wanted to unveil the Made in America show with you, the Made in America guy. Why they call you the Made in America guy, though?
Well, it's just something kind of tongue in cheek that I came up with. I've been an advocate for Made in America for many, many years, based on the experiences I've had with things drifting away from Made in America to places like China. So that's the topic, and that's what I'm here to talk about.
Well, that's great. We got a full show ahead, but before we get into our guests, and matter of fact, why don't you introduce our guests, who we can have at the bottom of that hour, so our audience will know.
Sure. We're going to start off with one segment with Dennis Torme from Silver City Pewter. He's going to talk about how pewter trinkets, ornaments, everything that he makes is how it's cast in the molds. It's a fascinating process. And listening to the last segment with Rita, maybe it's something that could even be used in the prototyping, because one of the things that we found out was that it's fairly easy to create a mold. And the second guest is going to be Jim Stuber, who's a very good friend of mine. I've known him for quite a while. He wrote one of the best books I ever read. It's called What If Things Were Made in America Again? And we're going to talk about everything from what inspired him to write that book, to what actually has happened to American communities as a result of globalization, and then what we can do about it. Jim will be on for 2 segments, and probably back quite frequently as a guest, because he's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Made in America.
Well, what I want to do is introduce you to my audience and get a little background on you. What are you doing now? Your background. You own a very successful manufacturing company. So let's introduce you, and then we're going to talk about the Made in America part of Home Talk USA. Yourself.
Sure. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. Actually spent some time overseas in Brazil during high school. My dad was transferred over there. Went to college, ended up with a degree in globalization of all things, international business. And then went to work in the steel industry, steel distribution, which took me down to Mexico during the beginnings of the NAFTA days. Eventually ended up working for a company called Oneida Limited, silverware manufacturer. You've probably heard of them. Pretty iconic brand. And Oneida decided to shut down their manufacturing operation in Mexico. I had the unpleasant task of laying off about 850 people, moved on, and then they decided they were going to close down the factory here in Sherrill, New York. So I teamed up with my partner, Matt Roberts, who also worked for Oneida, and we bought this factory. We started Sherrill Manufacturing in 2005 and created our Liberty Tabletop brand shortly thereafter. And we're the only manufacturers of stainless steel flatware left in the United States, and still making a go of it 19 years later.
Well, and that's a good point. And I'm so excited to have you co-hosting the show. I'm trying to do a big spectrum of topics. Home Talk USA is about education and information. It's not a fix a toilet show. It's not a handyman show. Invent America is walking a entrepreneur or an inventor, walking them through the steps, walking them through a blueprint to get their product to market. The product is now manufactured. It's now ready to distribute. So that's the point. It's just walking through the steps to help our audience know the technologies that's out there. But most importantly, Greg, the company and the person in America that's manufacturing it to bring it to market. And when I ran across you guys through Rita and what you're doing, all the great things you're doing with your company, I'm so excited to talk about Made in America. And so, what are you going to bring to the show? What can my audience, expect? What are we going to do to make their lives in their communities and their quality of life better? Because at the end of the day, that's what we need to do.
Well, we're going to be talking to people that are the makers, the shakers, and the patriots. And we're going to be talking to the makers so that they can describe what they've been through, how they figured it out, everything from finding a supply chain that works to how to go to market. We're going to be talking to the shakers who maybe disrupted some of that process and figured out a new way to do it. And the patriots who, why people looked at us when we bought a manufacturing facility in 2005, they thought we were nuts. But there was a little
Especially
bit of patriotism and a lot of.
Are you crazy?
Yeah. Are you nuts? So anyway, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about policy issues that are important, not politics, but policy that's important, and what we can all do to help push things forward to level the playing field and make it possible and profitable to make things right here in the USA.
Well, at the end of the day, again, we're not going to get into politics, but I'm going to just quote. I think a guy running for president, he's saying, "Let's make America great again." So I'm going to steal that. They said the Cajun man doesn't steal anything. I'm going to steal that because I tell you, this fits this show. We're going to make America great again. And how do we make America great again? Jobs. It's simple. Jobs. Jobs create everything. Tax flow. Your local community, education, infrastructure. I mean, I can go on and on without being a politician. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we can educate America on the features and benefits, that if I go to this shelf and I pick this made in the USA product, what are going to be the features and benefits of buying that product? Because it's a trickle down effect. You're not just buying it, you're purchasing it. There's a reason why you're doing that, because a lot of lives are being affected, by you buying that product. Does that make sense?
Yes, and our first guest today, Dennis, lives in Sherrill, New York, which is where Oneida shut down their factory, laid off 2,800 people. So that community was decimated, and he's one of the patriots and the makers and the shakers that are helping bring that community back. And then we're going to talk with Jim about how that same story plays out throughout America. Everything from textiles to automobile manufacturing, and how all those jobs were lost and communities were just decimated. But there's a positive thing at the end of the tunnel. It's a light. It's not a train coming at you. It's a bunch of people like Dennis and others that are fighting the good fight and bringing these jobs back. And we're happy to have them on.
Well, I'm excited to have you guys and co-host the show, and we're going to educate America, and that's the whole point of the show, and bring all these great companies to tell their story. Radio's telling that story, and we want to tell their American success story. Because, if I'm sitting listening to this, maybe I have an idea. Well, what do I do? Well, if you listen to 3 hours of Home Talk, an hour of Invent America, and now Made in America, boy, I tell you what, we're going to save a lot of companies a lot of money, a lot of money, because we're going to walk them through it. And we're going to make it easy for them, and for them to share their stories. And so the show is going to be at 3 o'clock Central Time on the Home Talk USA Radio Network all across America. And you're hour 3, and you're going to be here each week and every week with a guest, right? One of these.
Be here. Yep, I'll be here each week with one or more guests. Again, talking to the makers, talking to the shakers, and talking to the patriots.
We only have about a minute left. I'm going to get to Dennis, but I want to tell everyone that here that we're excited again to have this and what we're going to be doing here on this show. And Made in America. And all you have to do is go to HometalkUSARadio.com, HometalkUSA.com, and the Made in America link is there. The Event America link is sitting there, and all the information is there. All our podcasts, we're recording all our interviews. Our archives will be there. So anything that you need to know. So we're going to take a short break. Me and Greg Owens will be back. He's going to introduce our first guest, which is going to be Mr. Dennis Tormey with Silver City Metals to tell his story. So right here on the Home Improvement Broadcasting Network, I'm the Cajun Man along with Mr. Greg Owens. We're going to be right back. Y'all come back now, you hear? Yahee! Welcome back to Home Talk USA right here on the Home Improvement Broadcasting Network. This is the Made in America show. You're joining us now with my co-host. They call him the Made in America guy himself, Mr. Greg Owens. Greg, who's our next guest? You've been talking about this guy, Jim Stuber. Let me learn a little bit about him.
Well, our next guest is my good friend, Jim Stuber. He's, among other things, is author of the book, What If Things Were Made in America Again? He is an attorney. He got his his undergrad degree from Columbia and his law degree from Georgetown. He served as a chief legislative assistant to a senior member of the House. Jim has embarked on a career in private law since then, but in 2014, he returned to public policy and began researching his book, What If Things Were Made in America Again? And the book was published in 2017. It chronicles what is really a sad history of American policies that sent our factories and jobs overseas, disrupting and destroying the lives of families, communities across America. And the last book in the chapter describes how customers and companies and governments acting as customers can bring these jobs back by purchasing products that are made in this country. And through government policy work, Jim has also pushed this aspect in Congress. We've been working with him. I've been working with him at the Coalition for a Prosperous America. It's a non-political organization. It pushes policy, not politics. And Jim's passion for bringing these jobs back overseas is in large part due to his family background. Growing up, his father was a steelmaker in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. So, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Greg. Great to be with you.
I read a couple of things that people had to say about your book, and we're going to have other segments during this program in future episodes to talk about a lot of different things. But here's something that I read today. It was a review. Good thing I'm retired. I found this book so interesting, it was impossible to put it down. I ended up neglecting my vacation preparations. I've always been a reader, albeit syndipious one, and mostly it was my idle curiosity. I'd see Made in America and it made me happy. I'd see Made in Indonesia and it didn't upset me. Gone are those days, he goes on. This book has made me a militant Made in America shopper. So with that, tell us a little bit more about your background leading up to what you like to refer to as your light bulb moment.
Yeah, I'm glad to, Greg. Well, you mentioned it there in the introduction. Thank you for the very kind introduction. My family all worked in the steel mills in Pittsburgh, Ohio. My mother's father, his brother, my father. So that's what I grew up around. And it always bothered me watching those jobs go away in the 1970s and 1980s. I found it very troublesome. But I never was in any position to do anything about it. And so just kind of went on with my life. My first love was public policy. And so I did work for my congressman on Capitol Hill in the House. He was on the Energy and Commerce Committee. So we did touch on some of these issues. But it wasn't until one evening I really did have what everybody likes to refer to as their light bulb moment, except mine actually involved a light bulb. I took, as a true story, I swear, I took a light bulb out one night, and on it I saw two things, a replacement light bulb. the GE logo, which stands for Thomas Edison and all things American, and under it, in all caps, the word China. And I just looked at that, it grabbed a hold of me, and I thought, oh my goodness, if GE, of all people, are making their light bulbs in China, then maybe Houston, we have a problem. So it wouldn't let go of me. And I started looking into three questions. One is why was that GE light bulb and pretty much everything else now made in China or someplace like that? And secondly, is that causing a problem? And then thirdly, if it is causing a problem, what could we do about it? So I disappeared for most of 3 years. I was doing some consulting work, but most of 3 years into my college library. And I emerged 3 years later with the book, What If Things Were Made in America Again? Because I like to picture that vision of what if we did make things here again, that answered those three questions.
Well, that's fantastic. And like I said, I've read the book a couple times just so the readers out there, listeners out there know it's a very easy book to read. You didn't fill it up with a bunch of dry economic data. It's something that truly is hard to put down.
Well, thank you, Greg. That's kind. I tried to write it in a way that pretty much every American could read, but I did throw a lot of footnotes in there. I wanted it to be bulletproof. I wanted to get to the bottom of all this and really have the truth of all this available under two covers. But my goal was to make it readable, and I think I did succeed in doing that because honestly, I have to admit it, but I did not know 90% of what's in that book before I started my research. And I think that this is an important story for all Americans to understand. How did we get here?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much politicization of the topic, although all sides seem to be in favor of bringing our jobs back, but it's sometimes hard to separate the rhetoric from reality. And what I've read in the book and what I've heard from several comments is you really did a nice job of researching it like an economist would, and find the truth and put that in the book as opposed to some sort of narrative you were trying to push.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. There was a TV show back in the 50s, Dragnet, and the protagonist would say, "Just the facts, ma'am."
Right. So let's get on to talking a little bit about what happened. The first sort of question that you have. We've got a couple minutes, and we'll start it out in this segment and finish it up in the next one.
I started the book really in 1945. Our servicemen were fighting the Battle of the Bulge in Europe. My father had flown in a bomber out of Africa in the African campaign, and our men were coming home, and they were taking up jobs in these steel mills and making all of the appliances and bridges and things that America was making back then. But I discovered that the seeds of their demise had already been sown. Back in 1934, Roosevelt had run on a free trade platform claiming that the Smoot-Hawley Law had caused the Great Depression, which it had not. And so we were already trading away our future by giving the president the ability to move into these free trade agreements with other countries. And so starting with 1945, and then a big thing that happened was that the Chinese went communist. And so that was another thing where we said, hey, Japan, we'll take all your goods. Don't sell them to China. So that's how it all kind of got started. And then from there on, it's just been, another 75 years that we can talk about.
Well, we'll pick it up from there in the next segment. But it's just fascinating how this has been a process that's unfolded over a pretty significant period of time that has culminated in pretty much a disaster for a lot of communities here in the United States. Well, at this point, we're going to take a break. We're going to go pay some bills, talk a little bit about our sponsors. If you are interested in purchasing Jim's book, it can be found on Amazon or on our Liberty Tabletop website. We're proud to feature it in the other things section. So hang with us. We'll be right back.
Yeah, hey, welcome back to the Made in America show with my co-host, the Made in America guy himself, Mr. Greg Owens. Don't forget, though, if you want to check out our television show, it's hometalkusa.com. It's hometalktv.com. We have 61 episodes that's now online, so we invite you to check it out. And if you want to know anything about all our broadcasts, just go to hometalkusa.com. You can check out the Event America show, the Made in America shows. The links are all sitting right there. Now, Greg, I tell you, we're having a great conversation with Jim Stuber, and so let's go back to Jim, right, Greg?
Jim, welcome back. Second segment. Let's finish up talking about what happened, and then move all the way forward to the end of the book, which is, without spoiling it, because we want people to pick up and read it, what we can do about it.
I was mentioning that in 1945, our soldiers came home, but then when China went communist in 1949, it was a tremendous event because we decided we didn't want Japan and the other Southeast Asian countries trading with China. And so we said, well, we'll open up our market. And so, for example, we had a thing called the dollar blouse start showing up, whereas a blouse that cost $3, now you can get it for $1 from Japan. And so we just started giving our markets away to Japan, to the other, what were called the Asian tigers. And so that was kind of this period, 1945 to 1995. I call it the era of Japan and free trade. We threw in the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement with Mexico. We signed that in 1994, and we started hearing that giant sucking sound that Ross Perot had told us about, he correctly predicted. And so our policymakers were just feeding us these patently false theories about how this was all going to work out great for the American worker and our communities. And they were ridiculous theories. For example, they said, well, we'll just send all the low skill work overseas and we'll keep all the high skill work for here, as if half of Americans didn't have a lower than average IQ. They need those jobs. Or they'd say, well, we'll make the high tech products here, and we'll do all the low-tech products out there, as if those countries would possibly stay with the low-tech products. No, they wanted to go up the value chain. So these were just patently false theories that anyone could tell were not going to work out. But then the big factor was kind of like the 800-pound gorilla showed up and took out the 200-pound gorilla when China was allowed into the World Trade Organization. And then it just made Japan seem like small change because China, our company saw that as a big market they wanted to enter, and they also were just champing at the bit to move their production overseas. So we just started seeing this tremendous growth of a trade deficit with China, and that was just the economists. It was so bad that the economists call it the China shock, because they started measuring, and this is the second part of the book. They started measuring the damage all this was causing in American communities, and it was a disaster. There's a couple of economists from Princeton, Angus Keaton and his wife, who studied what they call the deaths of despair, which is people dying from alcohol abuse, drug overdoses, suicide. And when you look at the chart, you see the deficit with China take off at like a 45-degree angle at the same time these deaths of despair take off. So we added up the damage, and not only did we send $20 trillion to China, but we destroyed community after community across America. So the toll has been drastic. People are finally recognizing it now. And then more importantly, perhaps from a policy point of view, people have realized what a bad actor China really is, and how they are trying to take over the world and take over the South China Sea, and just very bad intentions. And so that has played into what you referred to earlier, which is people kind of coalescing around the idea that all of this free trade was nonsense. And by the way, we were building up our big adversary in the process. So then now we do have people in Congress. There's more of an understanding out there across America that this free trade business was a bad idea. And let's talk about what can we do to turn this ship around.
Right. So we talk a lot with inventors and people who have products that are made in the USA. What are we going to do about it? I assume that leads us right to the American consumer and going out there and making a conscious effort to buy American-made products.
Yes, we are not helpless. And it's very empowering if once people realize, as the writer of that first review, when they realize how much harm this has caused and is still causing, it'll really build a fire under you. How patently unfair and immoral it was to volunteer these American families and communities to the project of either solving poverty in China or going or having low priced goods for Americans to buy. This was terribly wrong. So we're not stuck with that as consumers. And just today, I was over at Home Depot, went to buy a garden hose, and there's about 8 or 9 of them there, but there's one there that was made in the USA. So we can become label readers, and you will be pleasantly surprised how often, if we take the trouble, there'll be a made in USA version of that product, often for no increase in price, and certainly not for much of an increase in price. I remember I bought my son his first hammer, and I could have bought one made in Hungary for $10 or his hammer made in Wisconsin for $15 for the price of a Starbucks. I got him the made in USA hammer. So consumers can have a powerful effect here. And sometimes it can be the big purchases, like our next automobile, where you can buy a Jeep that's made with 75% US content instead of that Chevrolet that was made in Mexico. So we can make these decisions, small and large, but it all adds up to a lot of money.
But Jim, let me jump in here right quick. And you're 100% correct. I don't know if you knew this, in about 10 years ago, I actually did a test here locally at an Ace Hardware. And basically what I did, my friend at the Ace Hardware, I said, we got to give the American consumer a reason to buy the product, not just putting it on a label. And I proved my point, and my experiment worked. What I did is I did a measuring tape, and we took the rest of the measuring tapes off the shelf, and we did just one by China, and then we did one next to it that was made in America. But what I did was, on the Made of America, I put a little 4 bullet points. If you purchase this product, these are the benefits. And I did it on a little card. But before I did that, I pulled it away. And what we did was, I was watching the contractors grabbing the China one first, and nobody grabbed the USA one. And then what I did was, and I filmed all this. And then what happened was, at the end of that, what I did is I put that little cheat sheet, or that little bullet card. And before, it was 10 China, 0 United States. And I need to tell you, it was 7 United States and 3 China. Now, some people did buy the China product because no matter what you do, they're going to buy cheap. It don't matter what it is, and it's going to break.
Yeah.
But the point is, I proved your point. It's just that I went a little further, and I gave them a reason to buy it other than stick it on a label. Does that make sense?
I am so glad you did that. I've often wondered, and it just
worked.
shows you. Yeah. So what if things were made in America again? That's the title of the book, and that's the question, and that we can pose to our listeners, Greg, is they could be made here again. And if they were, it's going to be a lot better for all American families. And yes, there's other things we can talk about in the future, about other policies. Right now, we're working on bringing generic drug making back to the United States, so that when you go to your family practice, there isn't a sign on the door saying that your drug is in shortage. There's some policy things we can talk about in the future, but for today, I just cannot encourage our listeners enough, because Michael, I had the same experience. I was watching there's 2 displays in Home Depot of brushes, 4-inch paint brushes, China, USA, and as I was standing there, some guy came up. They were the same price, and he came up and took the China one, even at the same price. So the consumer can make the big difference here.
Well, I've been an advocate of this. I've been after the manufacturers for over 20 years, and I didn't tell you, I started this. I do all the trade shows, just like Greg does a trade show. That's why I met Greg, and I do all the trade shows. And I need to tell you that in the early days, the Chinese used to come in there with their cameras. And then I went up to management. I went up to the show itself, and I said, we're going to have a problem here, and the problem is going to be with me, because I have a national radio broadcast, and you're the reason this is happening, to allow cameras in here to take pictures of the boots of the manufacturers. What do you think they're taking pictures of? To steal it. And this is
Yep.
20, 25 years ago. And of course, the
Yep.
American manufacturers were dumb enough to give them our intellectual properties. I mean, you don't have to have a brain surgeon to be an economist to figure out what was going on there. And you're
Yeah.
100% correct. Yeah. But I just want to throw that in there. And I know Greg wants to add some things to this too.
Well, I just like to finish up by saying thank you very much, Jim, for your book, for being a good friend, and I look forward to having you back on other segments to do a deeper dive on why we should make things in America again.
All right. We're going to have to take a short break, and we're going to be right back. Me and Mr. Owens right here on the Made in America show. We'll be right back. Yahee! Welcome back. Don't forget you can listen to us each week, every week at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock Central Time, right here on the Home Improvement Broadcasting Network. All right, Greg, while we've been talking about this guy, let's introduce him.
All right. Well, we're very pleased to have with us today Dennis Torme from Silver City Metals, Silver City Pewter. Dennis was born in Central New York, same town where our factory is. He graduated from Lemoyne College, a great Jesuit school in Syracuse. He's married with a couple kids. Dennis, along with his brother-in-law, Cliff Whitman, purchased Silver City Pewter back in the 1990s. He worked for the federal government, but recently retired. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about how he's going to re-engage and try and supercharge his business, devoting all of his energy to that business. So, Dennis, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Greg. Glad to be here.
So why don't you start out by talking a little bit to the audience about the process of pewter casting, from the molds, how they're made, what they're made of, the temperature we cast at. I did a tour of your factory not too long ago. Fascinating process. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, pewter has been cast for hundreds of years, but the way we do it now, I'll give you an example. Say we want to produce like a new Santa Claus ornament, pewter ornament. We have our graphics guy do a digital drawing of the ornament, and then we have a 3D modeler create an STL computer file, which is used in 3D printing. We 3D print the original model in a material called butterboard, which is somewhat hard material that we can use in our molding process. So now that we have the actual model made out of this hard butterboard material, we can put that in our silicone molds to make our pewter piece. And we use like 12-inch silicone disc molds. And these are like 1 inch thick with there being a bottom half and a top half. We layer the original model between these two halves and put that mold in what they call a vulcanizer. And this vulcanizer uses heat and pressure to bake and cure the mold. It uses pressure of about 1,500 pounds. And the temperature is about 500 degrees. And then we'll bake it for about 2 hours. And then when it comes out of the vulcanizer, we cut channels into the mold so that we can pour the molten pewter into the cavities of the mold. To cast this mold, we put it into a centrifugal casting machine. It's kind of like a washer machine. It spins around. So then we pour molten pewter, which is about 400 degrees, into the center of this mold. And it spins around and it fills the cavity of the mold where the original model was. And so we let it sit there for a few minutes so it'll harden up, maybe about 5 minutes. Then after it's hardened, we take the piece out of the mold. Then we'll deburr it, take off the little extra pieces that we don't want on it. Then we oxidize it, which is like a blackening process. and it blackens the whole piece. And what we'll do is we take the piece over to a buffing wheel. We buff the high spots off of the pewter piece, and depending on the use of the pieces, we spray them with a crystal clear enamel spray.
Well, that's fascinating. I already know the answer to this question, but I have to ask it so our listeners can hear this. Is there still lead in pewter?
We do not use lead in our pewter. Actually, it's made up of 92% tin and 7% antimony, and we use about 1% copper in the pewter mix. We get it from a company out in Rhode Island, and they send it to us in 5-pound bar ingots, which we melt into our pots.
Let's talk a little bit about the range of products that you make. It's quite diverse. And in the last hour, Rita was talking to someone about prototyping. And I just, as a side question, wondering if you ever get approached by people who are looking to make either a pre-engineered or an engineered prototype.
Well, we do a lot of customized items. I mean, that's a prototype, A lot of times we do virtual prototypes, proofs, which we send to the customer, which will show them what the actual final piece will look like, in a PDF form. And then we do sometimes we do pre-production proofs, so we'll do a prototype.
But as far as the volume that drives your business, I know it's quite diverse. You make a bunch of different products for us. What are the main products that you're producing, and what is the range of products you're producing? Some of the stuff you'd never think about, and then where do you see things going in the future?
Well, we do a lot of Christmas ornaments, and we do pewter on glassware and mugs that are produced in the USA, and we apply the pewter emblems to the glassware and to the mugs. A lot of logo type things. We do pewter measuring spoons, which you're familiar with, and hopefully we'll be doing pewter handled flatware.
Yeah, we're in the R&D phase on that right now, but that's something that we'd like to bring to the marketplace, a made in USA pewter flatware set.
Right.
So if I'm out there and I'm listening and I say, wow, I'd love to make something out of pewter, how do I get in touch with you guys?
Well, actually, we have a website that is currently in the works. It's not up yet, silvercitypewter.com, but it's currently in construction. And some of our items, of course, are sold on libertytabletop.com. And they can also contact me personally at dennis.tormey@gmail.com. But a lot of our products currently are sold through a distributor, a wholesale distributor to the college bookstore market.
All right, Dennis. Well, we're going to have to let you go. We're just simply out of time. But, man, great. And it's so great to have you guys. And good luck to you, okay?
Thank you.
All right, Greg. That about does it, Greg. Man, what another great show. And don't forget next week, 3 to 6 Central Time right here. Tune in to the Made America show with the Made America guy, Mr. Greg Owens. Till next week. Y'all come back now, you hear?
Everybody, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. We are so excited to introduce this third hour as Made in the USA. It is really important to Michael and I, as we've been talking about, this third hour, that we wanted it to be about products made in the USA. And we are so excited to have Greg Owens on with us. And he is going to be taking over this hour now and talking about all the wonderful products that are made in the USA, the people that do them, where they're made, how they're made. America is starting to revive on making things in the USA. So, Greg, thanks so much for becoming part of the Home Talk USA family. We're so excited to have you.
Well, Rita, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to getting this kicked off.
So introduce yourself to our audience on, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Greg Owens. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Liberty Tabletop. We're the only manufacturers left in the United States of stainless steel silverware or flatware.